Welcome to another FPL video. We're going to be talking about 12 players today to buy, hold, sell and skip, free for each section. If there are any other players that you think deserve to be in one of these different groups, then let me know down in the comment section below. And the same goes for if you disagree or agree with anything that we've discussed today. But let's get straight into it. The first player we're going to be talking about today is Kai Havertz, who hasn't featured too much in these types of videos throughout the whole season. But that's because only in the last few weeks, or you could say the last month or two, he has started to step up his game and he has become that false nine and that main striker for Chelsea instead of Romelu Lukaku. His underlying numbers aren't anything special, and the same goes for his goal output, but they're still pretty decent. What I'm a bit concerned about is the shot volume. 30 shots inside the box is okay, but only 16 on target and 37 shots overall. Not that great. 10 big chances is pretty decent, but at the same time, nothing special. But for a 7.9 million midfielder, I think he is one of the best. If you're looking at recent form, do I think he's going to sustain this for a long period of time? I'm not so sure. He hasn't really shown that he can do that in the Premier League for a long period of time, but I still think that he is one of the potentially better options for Chelsea. I never really liked their attacking options. Lukaku for me is a no-go right now. You're looking at Mason Mount. He's been fairly consistent over the years. He's got 8 goals and 8 assists this season. You've got Kai Havertz here with 6 goals and 3 assists. And then you have Ziyech. He was showing a bit of form before the Carabao Cup final, and he was actually my midfielder of choice for Chelsea. So any of those three could be decent. But right now, looking at the form and Kai Havertz's role as that false nine, I think I would lean more towards him. The fixtures until the end of the season are stunning, and he's also got some doubles yet to be rescheduled. So for me personally, I think Kai Havertz is one of the best midfielders in the game on current form, and he is worth buying. Another completely new name on this list is Cucho Hernandez from Watford. Some double-digit returns against Southampton and Arsenal, including a really good goal against the Gunners. 5 goals and 2 assists in 22 games is decent for a 5 million striker. What isn't so decent are his underlying numbers. But when you're paying for a 5 million striker, I don't think it matters too much. You've got Broja, who at the moment doesn't look like his first choice. You've also got Mateta at 5.2 million and Cucho Hernandez. I think they're the 3 best forwards under 6 million, but then for a little bit more you can get Ivan Toney, who's nailed, although he's facing Chelsea this week. Then you've got a few others, and they could actually be worth that extra bit more in price, like Che Adams, for example. But for the most part, these strikers just aren't offering enough value. There is Weghorst, who has a double in 31 and 33, but he's only got 1 goal and 2 assists since he's come into the Premier League in 9 appearances. With Cucho Hernandez, he's got 5 goals and 2 assists, and he's 5 million. So I think any of these strikers I just named are okay options. They're decent, but Cucho's 5 million, he's an enabler, and he can sit on your bench when need be, including against Liverpool this week. Then some good fixtures against Leeds and Brentford, and also Burnley in 35, where Cucho Hernandez could also do really well. So let me know what you think of this pick. He is just kind of an enabler, a cheap option, someone else to consider than Broja, who we've spoken about all season. There's also Mateta. I want to see a little bit more from him before I actually start recommending him a lot, but he's someone definitely worth considering. So for me, Cucho is a buy. Cancelo's ownership is still quite high, but I think for those of you who don't have him and you're looking for a replacement potentially for Trent Alexander-Arnold, depending on the injury news we get for him, I think Joao Cancelo is one of the best defenders in the entire game. The same goes for Reece James if he's fit, Robertson, etc. I think those 4 are pretty much the standouts. Joao Cancelo has been the best Manchester City asset, not only last season but also this season, although you could argue Gundogan was a really firm candidate in the last campaign. But I think in this season, no one really competes for Manchester City. No one's as consistent who offers as much value. 2 big chances for a defender is pretty decent. 6 big chances created, 8 assists, 1 goal, 60 shots with 20 on target. And that's what I mean when I was talking about Kai Havertz's shot volume. I mean, look at Joao Cancelo. He's a defender, although not the typical defender that you would expect, but still, he's got way more shots than the German international. 18 shots inside the box. His XG and XA are over 4, which for me is very decent for a defender. So quite sustainable figures, although there is an overperformance in the assists, but a severe underperformance in terms of the goals. And he might be due a goal, as they always say, but Joao Cancelo is definitely worth buying. If you're looking for a defender and you have the means to go big at the back, then I think Joao Cancelo is probably one of your best options, and he's one of the best players in the entire game. I think what's most appealing about him is that City and Liverpool, that title race will probably go down all the way to the wire. So Joao Cancelo has the incentive, and same with Pep Guardiola, to play his best players. And Joao Cancelo forms part, obviously, of City's best team. And that's the kind of main reason why he's featuring in the buy section. But if City already looked like they were going to be wrapping up the league fairly soon, then I really wouldn't be recommending these options, even Joao Cancelo, because they could be benched and they would prioritise the FA Cup and the Champions League. But as things stand, City still have a long way to go in the Premier League in order to win it, and Joao Cancelo is going to be a big part of that, and I think he's a great FPL option. We're going to be talking about plenty of right-backs today. Trent Alexander-Arnold features here because of the injury news. Now, what we know right now is that he's going to be out for several weeks, and it doesn't seem to be too serious, but there is a chance he misses the Benfica game, the first leg in the Champions League, so match day 9 of UCL Fantasy, as well as Game Week 31, that fixture against Watford. The problem with this is that in Game Week 32 he faces Manchester City, so if he were to miss that game against Watford in 31, then really you could get away with not having Trent Alexander-Arnold until 34, and in that case he could be a sell, a temporary one, but a sell nonetheless. But I think that we should wait, hold for now, and if we get any news that says he's going to be out for that Watford game, then I would sell. But for the time being, assuming he's going to be fit for that game, I think he's definitely worth holding, because if you go without the right back against Watford, I think you could be in for a massive shock and he could be in for a really massive return. You can always replace him with Reece James, Joao Cancelo, or another fullback like Robertson, and you won't really miss out too much in that case. But when you're looking at all the other defenders in the game, none of them really compare to the level of Trent Alexander-Arnold in FPL, and in that case I think you'd just be downgrading and shooting yourself in the foot and potentially putting yourself in a really precarious situation where Trent's high ownership and also his ability as an FPL asset could really damage your ranks. So for me, Trent Alexander-Arnold is a hold. His stats, I mean, look at his XA. He's a right back, yes, we know he's obviously really advanced, he's always in great positions and his crosses are amazing, but his expected assists is almost 10, 16 big chances. I mean, this is absolutely amazing. And in terms of the goals, it matches the XG. Most of his goal threat comes from free kicks. 41 shots overall, 12 inside the box. But I mean, these stats, especially the creativity ones, are absolutely insane. 77 key passes. He is integral to that Liverpool side. He might have some defensive weaknesses, but he's not as bad defensively as some people make out. And for me, Trent, despite the fact that he doesn't have a double anytime soon, he plays Man City in 32 and could miss out in 31 against Watford. For the most part, I think he's definitely worth holding, but of course, that is all dependent on any updates we get in terms of his injury. Another right back affected by injury updates and whether he will be available in time for Game Week 31 is Reece James, and if he is clear to play in Game Week 31 against Brentford, he is definitely worth buying. There's no doubt about it. And in the case of Trent being injured and Reece James being available, that is a really good like-for-like switch. The same goes for Joao Cancelo. His stats are absolutely amazing in terms of the goal output. 5 goals and 6 assists for a defender in 17 appearances is mind-boggling to say the least. 23 shots is pretty decent considering the amount of minutes he's had this season, and 3 big chances, 6 big chances created. His XG and XA aren't amazing, but still pretty decent nonetheless. There is an overperformance in both, but that also is testament to his crossing ability and his finishing, which has been sublime at times, like the goals he scored against Burnley and Newcastle. 13 shots inside the box, 32 key passes. He is still one of the best defenders in the game, and for me, he is the best Chelsea defender. In UCL Fantasy, it's a bit different because of ball recoveries, but in FPL, he is by far the best. Rudiger's the only one who can match him in a way, and maybe Thiago Silva. But Reece James, when he plays, can be absolutely devastating. Chilwell is another one, but obviously he's injured for the rest of the season. So let's wait and see what updates we get with Reece James. Now, some people think that he might miss out in Game Week 31 or 32, but I haven't seen any reliable sources comment on this. And therefore, if you do have Reece James, he is definitely worth holding on for now. And for those of you who don't have the right back, I would just keep an eye on his injury situation. And if he is clear to play, definitely keep an eye on it, because those fixtures are great for Chelsea, and I would still prioritise the defence over their attack, and Reece James gives you a combination of both with his goal output and the clean sheet potential. So for me, Reece James is a hold, but if he's clear to play in 31, you already know what I think in terms of whether we should buy him or not. All the holds in this week's video are popular FPL assets, and they're all subject to injury news. And with Ramsdale, it is reported that he's going to be out for 2 weeks, and that gives him enough time to potentially be back for that London derby against Crystal Palace away, which I don't expect to be an easy fixture regardless, but in that case I would try to keep him, because even if he were to miss that game against Palace, he should be back for 32, and I still think he is first choice over Bernd Leno. The distribution obviously is on another level. That's the main reason why Ramsdale is in the team over the German. For those of you with Ramsdale as the main goalkeeper and you don't really have a viable substitute, even someone like Ben Foster who you don't really trust to replace the Arsenal goalkeeper, I can understand why you would want to make a move, but I would still hold on, wait for more injury updates. I personally believe he will be fine in time for Crystal Palace, but let's wait and see what happens in the next week or two. I could be wrong about that, and I would definitely expect him to be fit in time for that Game Week 32 fixture against Brighton, and he is for me the best goalkeeper from now until the end of the season. And if you look at these stats, the defensive stats for Ramsdale and Arsenal, 22 goals conceded for the English goalkeeper, 265 shots conceded, 12 clean sheets, which is pretty high. And remember, he didn't play in the first 3 games of the season. His expected clean sheets is over 8, so there is a bit of an overperformance in terms of clean sheets and expected clean sheets, although that could be said for most of the teams and goalkeepers. And big chances conceded is 32, which isn't great, but at the same time is pretty decent compared to most of the league. And his expected goals conceded is 28. So as you can see, there is a degree of overperformance here, but there are certain games like Leicester, home and away, where Ramsdale came into his own, made some really good saves, and he is one of the main reasons why Arsenal kept those clean sheets. So he's a bonus points and save point machine. He is right up there in terms of the goalkeepers this season, in terms of who was the best throughout the whole campaign. So for me, Ramsdale is worth holding, and if he is cleared to play in 31, you could even consider buying him, especially on a wildcard, and I still put him into that best wildcard team. Check that out. And now let's move on to the sell section. I was very clear about Coutinho in Game Week 28. I liked that double a lot against Southampton and Leeds. He delivered. He was really good in that week, and those who didn't have him, like myself, were severely punished. But afterwards, the fixtures didn't look too great, and I'm not that surprised that he's been blanking. And he's not a sell just because he's been blanking recently, but those fixtures over the next 4 are really poor, and it includes a blank in Game Week 33. Coutinho's stats are pretty decent, although it's mainly the goal output. He has been overperforming a little bit. 3 big chances, 4 big chances created. His XG and XA are just under 3. 4 goals and 3 assists in 10 games is still impressive, but he was absolutely anonymous against Arsenal, and he's facing Wolves away and Tottenham at home next, which aren't the greatest fixtures. Leicester away and Norwich in 34 and 35 are decent, but just before that, he has a blank in 33, so I think it's very simple. I would sell Coutinho. Now, for those of you who have Coutinho and Rafinha, I would actually rather sell Coutinho, despite the fact that he has been better since coming to the Premier League than his fellow Brazilian counterpart. Now, that's not to say that he can't deliver in any of these games. He has the quality, but I think his time has passed. He could become an option once again around Game Week 34-35 when the fixtures turn for Aston Villa, but for the time being, at least for the next 3 or 4 game weeks, I think that it's worth selling Philippe Coutinho. We just spoke about Rafinha right now when we were talking about Coutinho, and I think he is worth holding potentially for 1 or 2 more game weeks, but ultimately he is a sell, and I think Game Week 33 presents the perfect opportunity when he blanks. I think it just makes complete sense, and when we compared him to Coutinho, if you see the underlying numbers, they are far better for Rafinha, although he has way more game time, but in terms of the goal output or goals and assists per minute, Coutinho is definitely far ahead, and Rafinha has a huge underperformance in terms of the assists, although the XG compared to the goals is a bit of an overperformance in that regard. And I've always said this, if Rafinha had a reliable striker up front throughout the whole season, like Bamford was in the last campaign, then I think Rafinha would have greatly benefited from it, not only from an FPL perspective, but also in terms of assists. He'd probably have at least double the amount that he has right now. And I've talked about Rafinha in so many of these videos throughout the whole season. We know what the stats are like. They're pretty impressive, but he doesn't really deliver those stats to FPL points, unfortunately. He is still a good option, but he's not as good as he can be, and he might not even be at Leeds next summer. He might be in another Premier League club, and he could become a bit more of an interesting option if he were to join one of the top clubs in England. But I think with Leeds, his time is up, at least as an FPL asset, and you can sell him now, maybe in 32, 33. I can understand if you decide to keep him on for at least 1 or 2 more weeks. I might do that myself, but ultimately, Rafinha is a sell. Despite his customary goal against Arsenal, which I completely predicted, and I think every Arsenal fan would have done the same, I don't think Jota is first choice any longer. Diaz is the first choice left winger, and the only reason Jota played was because Salah was nursing an injury from that Brighton game when he came off around the 60th minute mark in Game Week 29. So I think Jota is going to be rotating quite a lot with Diaz, although the Colombian right now is first choice. Jota's stats throughout the whole season are very good. A bit similar to Rafinha at times. He was vastly underperforming and he always would hit the post and he would never get those braces or hat tricks needed to get the bonus points. He kind of swerved a lot of those bonus points most of the time, even when he scored and assisted. But Jota was a really good option. I no longer think that he's as good of a choice as he was at the beginning of this season, and also up until that Leicester game when he got a 16-point haul. Ever since that game, he came on for a short cameo and then Diaz came and joined Liverpool and everything has changed. So for me, Jota is worth selling. He might do really well in Game Week 31. He might play over someone like Mane or Salah, who played just a few days prior in a really crucial World Cup qualifying match between Senegal and Egypt. But other than that, I think for the most part, Jota will be on the bench or at least share some minutes with Diaz, and he won't get those starts and 70-plus minute appearances that you really need for him to thrive, get those goals and bonus points, and be one of the best midfielders, which he was at one point, alongside Jarrod Bowen, Heung-min Son and Mohamed Salah. But right now, for me, Jota is a sell. We're now onto the skip section, and this is the polar opposite of Diego Jota. The stats across the board are really poor. You can see them on screen. The fixtures themselves aren't great, but there is a double for Everton in 31. That's why a lot of people will be jumping on Richarlison, Calvert-Lewin, trying to get these double game weekers to get an advantage over the competition and push up in the ranks. But I don't trust Everton and Burnley personally. In all my recent videos, I've been talking about probably avoiding the majority, if not all, of these Everton and Burnley assets. I just don't think they will deliver the way that in which we expect them to. Burnley play Manchester City in Game Week 31. I'm going to be talking about them very soon. And Everton are just absolutely poor. They got thrashed in the FA Cup. They get thrashed most weeks right now, and they're just looking really bad and they could be relegated. Richarlison isn't worth it. I haven't seen enough from him, not only in FPL, but just in general, in all of the performances this season, except maybe the Arsenal game where Everton won 2-1. That's the only time I saw Richarlison perform to a high level, and he could have got a really big return with multiple offside goals. But for the most part, Richarlison has been poor. The same goes for Everton, and I would skip Richarlison, probably Calvert-Lewin, and all of these Everton assets except for Gordon potentially. I mentioned that Manchester City fixture in Game Week 31 for Burnley and Weghorst. 1 goal and 2 assists. He was looking very good in his first 3 or 4 appearances. I had him for his 12-point return against Brighton. I was very happy with that, but ever since he's been absolutely disappointing. I captained him in Game Week 27. Big mistake, and I probably won't be falling for that again. Even if I were to bring Weghorst in ahead of Game Week 31, he definitely would not even be under consideration for captaincy. If he ends up hauling, then fair play to anyone who decides to do so, but I just never am going to think about it. I'd rather captain Salah or Kane in a single game week, and the stats, if we're being honest, are ridiculously poor. They were looking okay in the first 3 or 4 game weeks. He had some good performances, hit the crossbar I think on his debut against Watford, got an assist against Manchester United, really good against Brighton, but in every other game since then he's been very poor. The same goes for Burnley. His XG is 1.46 in 9 appearances and his XA isn't even 1. 2 big chances, 1 big chance created, 13 shots, 10 in the box, 5 on target. These stats are horrendous. Yes, he's only 6.4, 6.5 million. It doesn't matter though. Weghorst looks really bad in terms of the stats. He hasn't been as good as he was in his opening 3 or 4 games. With better service, he can deliver, and fixtures like Everton and Norwich, he could definitely do really well. And the main appeal of these Burnley assets are the 2 doubles in 31 and 33. So if you're looking to skip the free in 33, Weghorst is worth purchasing in that case, and even if he blanks, he can get 4 points in 31 and in 33, which is more than most strikers pretty much in any single game week. But honestly, with Weghorst, I would skip him, and the same goes for pretty much every single Burnley asset, except for maybe Nick Pope. The final player in this video is Cristiano Ronaldo. That double in 33 might make him one of the most captained options in that week because players like Salah and Kane have a single game week as opposed to Cristiano Ronaldo and Bruno, who could be really popular, but I still wouldn't even go there, and maybe he's worth including on a free hit, but I honestly wouldn't want to have him and I would completely skip him. If you do have Ronaldo, then I would keep him for the next 3 game weeks and then look to sell, but otherwise just skip Ronaldo and all these Manchester United assets. His stats are good across the season. Whenever I've talked about him, he's kind of a nice mixture of goal output and underlying numbers, but he still doesn't deliver to the level and consistency that we expect, not only from Ronaldo, but from a over £12 million priced asset. And the forwards have been completely disappointing. When you have Harry Kane, who's in the form he's in, why would you go for Ronaldo over Harry Kane? I've seen some people in streams say, why not go for both? I just think that's way too much money in your forward line. You would rather invest that in your midfield and your defense. I think that's where the bulk of the points are at. And up front, you can get someone like Che Adams or a Weghorst, go for Harry Kane, and then a cheap striker like Cucho Hernandez, Mateta, or Broja. I don't think it's worth going for 2 premium strikers, and I definitely wouldn't go for Ronaldo over Harry Kane. So for me, Ronaldo and pretty much most Manchester United assets are worth skipping, but on a free hit in 33, that's when I would consider them, but not for my team long term. So that's it. We've talked about 12 players free to buy, hold, sell, and skip. Let me know if you disagree with any of these picks. I'd be curious to know. And the same goes for any other players that we might not have mentioned, or even those that we kind of talked about along the way, like Mateta. Would you buy him? Let me know. And if you enjoyed this video, smash the like button and subscribe if you're new around here. Click the notification bell so you never miss a single upload. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and on Instagram it's Dylan_RCM, so pretty easy to find there. You can also join the Discord server. The link is in the description below. And be sure to tune in for future deadline streams, reaction streams, and also other streams that we'll do throughout the next few weeks, including UCL Fantasy, and there could be some extra ones for FPL, so let me know what you want to see in this channel. There's also going to be more videos to come, so stay tuned for that, including a best free hit team video and much more. So take care, enjoy the football as always, and I'll see you next time.